There's this post I saw recently that I can't get out of my head. Honestly, out of all the Pixar films, I think WALL-E is my least favorite. It's just kind of boring, and I feel like a lot of the other films carry a deeper message, like The Incredibles and Monsters Inc. WALL-E is just pretty boring. Now, when I read this, I was actually mad, as I think WALL-E is likely the deepest out of all the Pixar films. The first few minutes of WALL-E are some of the quietest moments in any Pixar film, and yet they might also be some of the most disturbing. As the director of the film, Andrew Stanton, would describe it,
That sentence is this huge foundation for why Wally's so charming. People sometimes say, oh, it's so dark in the beginning. Why'd you make it so dark? I said, you would not be charmed by Wally or like Wally if it wasn't so dark at the beginning. He's this little light in the middle of all this darkness, and that's why you like it. And that has a lot to do with a huge kickstart with why you like him.
the movie opens not with dialogue or action, but with a slow descent from space toward a planet that looks strangely unfamiliar. As the camera moves closer, it becomes clear that this is Earth, but it is an Earth that has been completely abandoned. Cities sit empty, their streets buried beneath dust and debris, and towering over everything are massive structures that at first glance resemble skyscrapers. Only after a moment do we realize that these towers are not buildings at all, but stacks of compressed garbage rising into the sky. This opening sequence is haunting precisely because nothing dramatic appears to have happened. The planet was not destroyed by war, nor was it struck by an asteroid. Humanity did not vanish overnight. Instead, Earth seems to have simply filled up with trash. The implication is that the collapse of this world was not the result of a single catastrophic moment, but the result of a slow accumulation of everyday decisions. People bought things, used them briefly, and threw them away. Those objects piled up over decades, then centuries, until the landscape itself became defined by the waste humanity left behind. This idea was not accidental. The filmmakers deliberately chose garbage as the visual language of the story because it immediately communicates what humans leave behind when their way of life becomes unsustainable. Director Andrew Stanton has explained that trash was the simplest possible storytelling device for the message he wanted to convey. As he once described in interviews discussing the film's production, garbage is something every viewer understands instantly because it represents the physical footprint of human activity. When people consume, something is eventually discarded. In the world of the film, humanity attempts to solve the problem not by changing its behavior, but by leaving the planet altogether. People board enormous spaceships built by the corporation by and large and depart for what is supposed to be a temporary evacuation. Robots are left behind to clean the planet, or humans live comfortably in space. What is supposed to be a short absence gradually turns into centuries, and the cleanup effort fails, leaving a single functioning robot continuing the task long after the rest have stopped. The existence of by and large is another piece of the film's warning. In WALL-E, this company becomes so large and powerful that it effectively replaces the government, controlling everything from retail stores to space travel. Although this is clearly exaggerated for storytelling purposes, the idea reflects a broader concern about how systems built around continuous economic growth interact with the limits of a finite planet. Businesses succeed by selling more products each year, which means producing more goods and extracting more resources. However, the Earth itself cannot expand to accommodate that growth. Natural systems eventually reach their limits, and when those limits are ignored for long enough, the consequences become visible. The most unsettling part of WALL-E arrives when the story finally shows what has become of humanity. The survivors of Earth's collapse now live aboard a massive spaceship called the Axiom, a self-contained floating city designed to provide endless comfort. At first glance, life on the ship appears luxurious. Robots perform every task, meals appear instantly, and passengers spend their days relaxing while automated systems handle the responsibilities that once required human effort. However, the longer the audience observes life on the Axiom, the clearer it becomes that something important has been lost. Humans no longer walk. Instead, they move everywhere in hovering chairs. Conversations happen through screens rather than face-to-face. Most passengers spend their entire day staring at digital displays that follow them wherever they go. This vision of the future was intentionally designed as a reflection of modern habits rather than a purely fictional exaggeration. Stanton has noted that the idea partly came from noticing how often people now occupy the same physical space while remaining mentally absorbed in their own devices. The Axiom pushes that tendency to its extreme conclusion, showing a society that has become so dependent on convenience that it has gradually disconnected itself from the physical world. What makes this portrayal particularly unsettling is that the passengers aboard the ship appear perfectly content with their situation. They do not express outrage about the loss of Earth, nor do they question the systems that led them there. Most of them barely remember the planet at all. Instead, they continue living within the environment provided for them, surrounded by constant entertainment and effortless consumption. The film suggests that this quiet acceptance is the real danger. Environmental destruction rarely happens suddenly. It develops slowly over long periods of time through processes that can be easy to overlook or postpone addressing. Pollution accumulates gradually, ecosystems degrade over decades, climate patterns shift over generations. Because the changes are incremental, people often adapt to them without recognizing how serious the long-term consequences may become. In the middle of this bleak future, the story introduces a symbol of hope. While exploring the abandoned Earth, WALL-E discovers a tiny green plant growing in the middle of the wasteland. The discovery is important not because the plant is large or powerful, but because it proves that life on Earth has not completely disappeared. The planet still has the capacity to recover if given the chance. Stanton has described the plant as a metaphor for resilience, explaining that life has an extraordinary ability to survive even in harsh conditions. A small sprout pushing through a crack in concrete can represent the possibility of renewal after destruction. The ending of the film reinforces this idea without suggesting that recovery will be easy. When humans finally return to Earth, the planet does not instantly transform back into a paradise. Instead, the closing sequence shows people gradually learning how to care for the world again. They plant crops, rebuild ecosystems, and begin the slow process of restoring what was lost. This conclusion reflects the film's central message. The collapse of Earth in WALL-E was not caused by a single catastrophic event. It was the result of millions of small decisions repeated over generations. The recovery of the planet will likewise depend on countless small actions taken over time. Ultimately, the film is not simply warning about pollution or waste, it is warning about the habits that allow those problems to grow unchecked. A society that prioritizes convenience above all else can gradually lose sight of the systems that sustain it. Consumption becomes routine, waste becomes invisible, and the long-term consequences are pushed further and further into the future. The lonely robot who spends centuries cleaning Earth one cube of trash at a time embodies the opposite approach. His work is slow and repetitive, but it represents the idea that change begins with individual effort. The film suggests that the future of the planet will not be decided by a single dramatic moment, but by the accumulation of everyday choices. And if WALL-E was trying to warn us about anything, it may simply be this: the world we inherit tomorrow is built from the habits we practice today.